Welcome to Crosstalk Solutions. My name's Chris, and today we're going to be taking a look at a brand new router. This is the Synology RT6600ax. Now, this is the first, Wi-Fi home sort of router combo unit that I have checked out from Synology. And from what I've read in the data sheet, as well as the software that runs on this device, it looks pretty promising. So we're going to check out absolutely everything about this device. MSRP is $299.99 US. The RT6600ax is available today, May 11th, 2022 in the United States, and it will be available in Europe and beyond in about a month, or as they say, next month. So we don't know exactly when, but sometime in June. So before we take a look at this thing, if you guys enjoy this kind of content, make sure you like and subscribe to Crosstalk Solutions for 2 to 3 brand new tech videos every single week. Also follow at CrosstalkSOL on Twitter for all of the latest updates. First things first, all right? I have been very vocal in the past, and I hate to start on a negative note, but I have been very vocal in the past about how I dislike this sort of form factor with all of these various, spider leg, antennas on this device, or on these types of devices, I should say. So we're going to try to look past that, right? I personally prefer the aesthetics of access points that don't have antennas, big antennas sticking off of them all over the place. But this is a design that does work. I recently worked on a similar access point for a buddy's house, and this type of design absolutely covered his entire house. So if you're looking at this for your home, I have no doubt that the coverage is going to be great once you get past all of these sort of the looks of all of these antennas. So there are 6 antennas on this device. 2 of them are for 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi, and 4 of them are for 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi. So other than that, right across the front here, we have all of our status lights, and swinging around to the back, we've got a USB 3.2 port. So this USB port can be used for add-on storage. So if you want to add like a USB hard drive connected to the device, which can be used for SMB shares, it can be used for FTP, it can do time machine backups. The USB port can also be used to USB tether an internet connection from an Android or iOS device. So that's pretty cool as well. Then we have a 1 gigabit WAN port. And then over here, we have a 4-port switch. 3 of these ports are 1 gigabit LAN ports, and the 4th port, the first one here closest to the WAN, is a combo WAN-LAN 2.5 gigabit port, meaning that if you have an internet connection greater than 1 gigabit, you're going to want to plug it into this combo WAN-LAN port and set it as a WAN. Now, being that there are 2 WAN ports on this device, those can be used for failover between multiple ISPs or load balancing between multiple ISPs as well. Besides that, we have our power connector, a reset button, and a physical power switch, so push in and push out, which is okay. It's kind of like set in here, but with this physical power switch, it would be possible to accidentally hit it and turn off your device. So I don't really like that design so much, but some people do like having a physical power button instead of, sort of shut down via software. Okay, so I have the router plugged in. The next thing I'm going to do is come over here to my laptop, and when you first are setting up the device, it becomes 192.168.1.1, and so you just connect to that IP address with a browser. You can also connect to router.synology.com, and it will also find the device. Finally, they have an app that you can use, which is called DS Router for Android or iOS. And DS Router is version 2.0 as of the recording of this video. Now, I'm not going to use DS Router from my device to manage this. I'm going to do it through a browser. But just know that you can manage everything through that app. I shouldn't say everything. You can manage most of the most common features through the app. There are going to be some features that are only available in the web GUI, however. So we're going to use the web GUI to set everything up. And that's the next step. Let's pop in and go through the initial setup wizard. Okay, so getting started with the initial setup wizard, I have gone to router.synology.com, which redirected me to port 8000. I do already have internet access, so just by plugging in a WAN connection and plugging my computer into one of the LAN ports, I do have WAN activity happening already. And we're going to say start. Okay, so set up the administrator account. And now we want to set up our Wi-Fi network. We're going to call this Syn Secure. And we're going to use my super strong demo password of 123456789. And we're going to say next. Certainly, if you're setting up your own Wi-Fi passwords, choose a much more secure password for your SSID than I am doing here. All right, next we get to choose the operation mode. So there's wireless router or wireless access point. Now, these Synology routers can be used in mesh mode, meaning if you have a very large home where this is not providing all of the wireless coverage you need, you can add a second one of these devices and put it in mesh mode so that one is the master and then you have a separate mesh device wirelessly connected to this one and then sort of rebroadcasting that signal to other areas of your home. And then we can choose whether or not we want to enable external access to the SRM, which is Synology Router Manager. We're going to say disabled in this case, and next. Internet connection. Do we have a static IP? Do we have DHCP or PPPoE or DS Lite? I'm not sure what DS Lite is. All right, we're going to say apply. And now it is setting up the Synology router. It says it will be ready in 3 minutes. All right, so after the initial setup wizard is complete, we can log into the Synology Router Manager. And if you're familiar with Synology's products at all, this is going to look pretty familiar because it looks a lot like the same interface that we get with the Synology NAS systems. So we have our sort of desktop here, and then we have various applications that we can use to configure the router. So if we come over here to Network Center, this is where we can configure our WAN and LAN settings. So for instance, under local network here, I have added a third network. By default, we get our primary LAN, we get a guest network that is isolated by default, and then I added a third network for IoT devices. Now, when you add a network, by default, this network isolation is checked. So any new network that you add is not going to be able to get into any of the other networks that you have unless you specifically uncheck that box. And the reason that you'd want to do that is if, for instance, you wanted to be able to get into your IoT network to manage things. So from the secure network, from the main LAN, if you had a surveillance NVR in your IoT network, or if you have Home Assistant in your IoT network, or a Lutron controller for lights, or whatever the case may be, you might want to, from your main LAN, be able to get into the IoT network. And if that client isolation is on, it won't work by default. So you have to uncheck that box and then create firewall rules to allow and deny traffic between those interfaces. So just looking at the settings for this network, we can see in general, we have just the basically subnetting information. Ethernet port allows you to bind a network to a specific port. So for instance, if you had a bunch of cameras in your NVR in a surveillance network, I could bind that to port 3 on the back of this device and then plug a switch into that port that is essentially going to be VLAN tagged with that network only for anything coming out of the port. Then you have Wi-Fi settings, which is actually a different application we'll look at in a second, and then we have all of our DHCP settings, and notice that the DNS for DHCP is just the router itself by default. Okay, so the network setup is pretty standard. What I did here, though, is I created some firewall rules because I wanted to see how easy it is to sort of set up communication between these various LANs. So I disabled the isolation on both the main LAN as well as my IoT network. And I want to set up communication such that the IoT network cannot get into the main LAN at all, but the main LAN can get into a specific IP address, such as like an NVR in this example, in the IoT network. You could also open it up so that the main LAN can get to any IP address in that IoT network. But for our example, I'm just pretending that I have a surveillance NVR in that IoT network, and I want devices in my main LAN to have access to it. So let's take a look at those firewall rules. We're going to go to security, and we're going to click on firewall. So we see I have 3 rules here. The first rule is basically saying, for this specific network interface, in which case this is the IoT network, being the source, so if the source is the IoT network and the destination is the primary network, we are going to deny all traffic. All right, so that effectively firewalls off the IoT network, so those devices cannot get into the secure network or the main network. Then I have a secondary rule which blocks the other direction, right? So any devices that are in the secure network cannot get into the IoT network at all. Now, this is the rule where if you did want to allow that traffic, where secure, anything in secure can get to anything in IoT, you would just make this an allow rule instead of a deny rule. That way you've got a one-way communication, right? So secure can get to IoT, but IoT cannot get to secure. What I've done, however, is I have blocked both ways, and then I'm going to specifically open up a single IP address with a third rule. So I'm going to click on this one here. This is the allow NVR rule. Let's go ahead and edit that. And in this case, the source is the primary network, all IP addresses. The destination is the IoT network, and specific IP address, and I'm pretending that my NVR is at 192.168.10.10. Okay, so basically we're saying anything from the secure network can get through to any port on 192.168.10.10. I could also lock it down to just specific ports if I wanted to, and if we scroll all the way down, the action is allow. Okay, so these are very, very simple firewall rules. The last step then, of course, is to order your firewall rules so that they go in the order that you want them. So I have the allow rule up on top and then my two block rules on the bottom. If I move the allow rule to the bottom, well, it processes these in order. So it would never get to that allow rule before it blocks the traffic. So you want to make sure that they are in the correct order, and to do that you can just drag and drop things around. Once you're happy with your firewall rules, you can hit save, and this is great. So it's a very simple way to do firewalls. It has all the functionality that most people would need, and it's very straightforward and simple to set up. All right, moving now into our Wi-Fi. So let's take a look at our Wi-Fi settings. I do have 3 Wi-Fi networks. Let's look at my SynSecure Wi-Fi network. We're going to edit that network, and we can see the password. We can set a Wi-Fi schedule. We can add MAC filtering, and then they've got a whole bunch of advanced options as well. This Smart Connect button turned on means that we have combined the 5 gigahertz and 2.4 gigahertz networks, and we are letting the router decide when a client connects which band are they going to connect on. It determines that automatically. Okay, so there we have it. Pretty standard network and Wi-Fi setup settings. Basically has everything that anyone would need for a home network or even a small business network. Another key feature of the Synology RT6600ax that is designed for family and home use is the Safe Access feature. So if we click on Safe Access, this gives us the ability to set up different profiles. We can set up profiles on a per network basis, or we can create various users and then set up profiles for those users. So parents, pay attention, right? This is the stuff that you want for parental controls as well as controls for your guests. So I set up a couple of different profiles here. First, we have network profile that I did on the guest wireless network, or the guest network. Let's take a look at that. So first of all, right here, you can see an overview. If you have it set up, so for instance, I have it set to the child function, which is going to block inappropriate websites. And you can see that, of course, I had to test this out, right? So I had to pull up an inappropriate website. And if you actually click on this inappropriate attempts, it tells you which device attempted the inappropriate website, and it tells you which inappropriate website they attempted. So pretty interesting. If we go over here to edit the guest network, we can do a few things here. So we have our devices that are connected to that network. We have a schedule. So since this is a guest network, we can open it up only during certain hours. You know, for some businesses, we like to do that so that the guest network is only enabled during their business hours. That prevents people from, you know, parking outside and hopping onto their guest network when the office is closed. But you can also do that for home use if you want. Then we have our web filter. And essentially this web filter allows you to set different web filtering profiles. So child profile is going to block adult websites. It's going to block illegal websites. Same thing with employees. It also blocks social networks, for instance. Guest network prevents illegal websites, but it does not stop adult websites. Or you can do a custom setup and set everything yourself by adding your own filtered rules. And then finally, we have Safe Search, which allows us to enable safe search functionality for Google, Bing, DuckDuckGo, as well as YouTube. And I think everything works out of the box except for Google, which I believe you need an API key for. I could be wrong about that, but anyways. So then we can also add different user profiles. So we can see here that I added a dad profile, right? And I uploaded a picture of myself from like 15 years ago because that's the only one that I happen to have on this laptop. And if we edit this profile, you can assign devices to a specific profile. So my kids, have tablets, right? I can assign the tablet to the kid, create a profile for the kid, and then I can set their internet schedule. When are they allowed to connect? When are they not allowed to connect? I can also give them a time quota. So for instance, 3 hours and 30 minutes is the maximum amount of internet those specific devices that are attached to this profile would be able to use in any given day. And then after that, their access is cut off by the router. We also have the same web filtering rules as well as the same safe search rules. And you can set this up. You can set up a profile for your guest network, and then you can set up a profile for yourself and every member of your family and assign the devices to each member of the family. And that's it. You're pretty much done from there. You have pretty good control over who can see what and when and how long they can serve. Just like the Synology NAS systems, the Synology Router Manager also has a package manager that allows you to install add-on packages. They have add-on packages to make this thing its own DNS server, download station, media server, radius server, threat prevention, which is IPS, IDS features, as well as this VPN Plus server. And VPN Plus essentially makes it really, really easy to set up multiple different kinds of VPNs. So what's special about Synology VPN Plus? You can do a web VPN, so experience this clientless and effortless VPN service with a web browser, basically allowing you to web browse to a VPN connection into your home network. They also have standard SSL VPN. Experience this secure and speedy VPN service with an exclusive client application as well as remote desktop. So again, I'm not going to go through too much of this as far as how to set it all up because this video would end up being 2 hours long. But here you can see Synology VPN, standard VPN, site to site, etc., etc., etc. So lots of different VPN options as part of this Synology router as well. Okay, so that's about it. If you guys are interested in more videos on specifics of this router and how to set up different features, I'm always happy to do videos. Just let me know down in the comments below if that is something that you're interested in, and specifically what you're interested in, so that I know what to make videos on. Now, my overall impressions of this router from playing with it this afternoon. Overall, I like it a lot. It's really robust. The interface has been super snappy. According to the datasheet, it has a quad-core 1.8 gigahertz CPU with 1 gig of DDR3 RAM. So I have found really no slowness whatsoever when managing this thing via the web interface. The one thing I don't like about it are the aesthetics, right? I personally don't like the way all of these antennas look popping off of a device. And, it is wall mountable, like they have hooks for wall mounting it, but then you've just got it up on your wall with like all of these antennas sort of pointing out all over the place. So, I don't prefer all of the antennas, though, again, performance-wise, it does seem to work very well with, your client devices, and certainly this would provide great Wi-Fi coverage to your entire house, assuming you don't live in a super humongous mansion or something. I think the ease of use of setting up new networks, new wireless SSIDs, and firewall rules is actually really nice. Super simple to set up firewall rules, super simple to set up communication between networks when that is a sort of more complex level of networking, right? So they made it really easy by just saying, hey, what's your source? What's your destination? Are we allowing or denying this traffic? And so you can just go in there and set up rules very simply. Same thing with VLANs. It doesn't really get into VLAN tagging and untagging. It just says, hey, what port do you want this to work on? And that's going to be an untagged port on whatever VLAN in the back of the device, right? So they're kind of trying to make it as simple as possible, which gears this thing more towards home users and not, IT professionals. But, that's what a lot of people are looking for. I also really, really like the Safe Search features and the Safe Surf functionality. You know, I'm at an age where I have kids and they are on the internet. They have tablets and they're playing Roblox and they are, you know, working with the computers and stuff. So it's nice to know that with this type of router, I'd be able to get in there and granularly define their access, their profile, what devices belong to which members of the family, and set individual rules on those different devices and family members if I want to. Now, there's a lot of stuff that I did not test about this device. You know, I connected a phone to this wirelessly, but I didn't really run any speed tests or anything. In fact, you know, let me go ahead and run a speed test. So I'm connected to the guest network. I don't have any sort of throttling on or anything like that. Let's just do a standard network speed test. This is Wi-Fi 6, by the way, not Wi-Fi 6E, but I'm getting 630 megabits from my phone to the router on the download, and it looks like about 20 megabits upload. So the connection from my phone to this device is maxing out my internet connection. So my internet connection is 600 by 20, and I am absolutely maxing it out from my phone to this device. So that seems to be working just fine. Granted, I haven't done any load testing or anything like that. I also like the USB port on the back and how functional it is, so that you can add a USB drive, put some media on there, make this thing a media server with an add-on package. You can make it an SMB file share. You can make it an FTP server. You can use the USB port to tether your phone to the device with USB, and then, you know, use your phone as your internet connection if you wanted to do that. So I really like that functionality in the back, and I also like the fact that they have the 2.5 gigabit WAN LAN combo port. I think that's a nice feature. Again, I didn't test out any of the failover or load balancing of this device, but it does have dual WAN capability with both failover and load balancing. So yeah, overall, I think it's a great product. I'm excited to see where Synology takes this. I mean, listen, I've been a fan of Synology NAS products for a long time. I use their NAS personally in my own home, and I love it. You know, one thing I would love to see is, you know, we have that capability where you can have an SMB file share with a USB hard drive plugged into the back of this thing. It would be really great if they could integrate with their own Synology NAS and kind of create like a WebSocket connection between the NAS and this device to add functionality that sort of ties those two devices together in some way. Again, I'm just spitballing and brainstorming. I'm just thinking, like, they're both Synology. It would be cool to have some sort of communication or connection so that the router knows about the NAS and can maybe enable some additional functionality there. That'd be super cool. All right, so what do you guys think about the Synology RT6600? Tell me about the antennas. Do you guys care if it has antennas sticking all over the place? Do you like the more cleaner aesthetic of devices that don't have antennas sticking out everywhere? I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you give me a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please click subscribe. My name's Chris with Crosstalk Solutions, and thank you so much for watching.